Hello, and welcome to the TripOn podcast, in which we combine architecture, entertainment, and urban life. My name is Lee.
My name is Alex, and we're an architect and film entertainment professional who travel a lot, and we're also interested in urban development and attractions.
And if you want to see what we saw during this experience, check our Instagram at TripOn Podcast. And so this time we're going to do it a bit different. Before we dive into the subject for today, I want to actually go to some listeners' questions or listeners' remarks. So as we already mentioned a couple of times, if you have anything to say or you have questions for us, you can go to triponpodcast.com. So Alex, tell me, what was there?
Yeah, right. We had a couple of questions. One of them was, what is IP? And if you could respond, give maybe some examples or explain.
Yeah, that's a very good question, because we have been using this term IP a couple of times. It's actually a very common term that is often used in the theme park industry. IP stands for intellectual property, and what we mean by that is the intangible creation of the human intellect. There are many different types of intellectual property, and it basically means something that is holding a patent, copyright, trademark, or trade secrets. So the intellectual property is actually automatically built into the law for many countries, especially in the European Union, in the US, in most of the countries in the world. IP, so the actual copyright, is actually built in the law. And it basically recognizes that if you are the original creator of something, or if you are the official right holder of something, it means that other people, other institutions cannot just use your IP without paying you for that, or without compensating you for that. So when we talk about IP in the theme park industry, especially when we talked about it for example, Motiongate, we mean that Motiongate is using the intellectual property from another institution or another company, in this case actually a movie studio from Hollywood. And to use those IPs in their park, they actually have to pay a licensing fee. So a good example of that is the John Wick, the character, but also the film franchise is not owned by Motiongate, so they have to pay the original creators the licensing fee. And another really good example of a giant IP holder is, of course, Disney. Disney is the only company that is allowed to use their own IPs in their parks, or they actually license it to other companies to make use of the Disney IP. So that's what we mean by IP. So really good question.
All right, thank you, Lee, for explaining it so well. And also we wanted to add that if you would have more questions, feel free to ask us. You can also ask us on the website by sending a message or even sending a audio recording. We'll be more than happy to answer your questions.
Yeah, and this was not the only thing that came in. There was another thing that came in, and this was actually quite funny because we have to do a bit of a rectification. There was one episode about Dubai, the city of Dubai. And in this episode, you mentioned something and someone responded to that, in all honesty. And we have to get back to that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think I know. It was about the statement that the distance from Dubai Mall to the Dubai Metro is half an hour walk. But actually the listener, she took her time, she put her Apple Watch on and measured exactly how long does it take to get to Dubai Mall, because she was very, very curious. And it was 13 minutes, right? From what I remember.
To be clear, 1-3.
Yes. So
they came to an exact number. They say that it was just over 13 minutes from the Dubai Mall Burj Khalifa metro station until entering the Dubai Mall, which, in all honesty, is still 13 minutes walking through a very bare and blank tunnel. So it's still quite long. But I really commend the listener for taking it so serious.
Yes, we'll be more careful about exact data.
Yeah, and then it's actually time to get to the next point, which is to talk about the trail of the last visit. So, of course, the last time we visited Ferrari World. What stuck with you, or what is the thing that immediately comes up thinking about this experience?
Flying Aces was a big surprise, and we've done it 3 times. But the same thing was with Formula Rossa because it is the fastest roller coaster in the world. It was also open at that time, which we were very lucky about. And second thing that was quite memorable from the visit are the Formula One cars, the cars that took part in the races in the past. So it was for Formula One fans, I think it was also quite a memorable thing. How was it for you?
Something that we didn't mention in the last episode about Ferrari World was one experience that we actually had in the park. There was a dark ride called Made in Maranello. Do you remember this one?
Not so much, but I think it's because it wasn't that memorable.
Yeah, I remember that this dark ride is basically taking you on a trip through the production process of a Ferrari car. And on paper, it sounds like a really good idea, like a great concept. I think that dark ride needs a lot of work to be refreshed or to do something with it.
Yeah, and some elements seems like they were not working or they maybe were not really updated. So maybe they need a little bit of maintenance.
What we discussed, Mission Ferrari, which is a very, very surprising multidimensional coaster. I looked a bit into it. I started reading about it because I was just so intrigued by this ride. And I found out that this is a ride with a really captivating story behind it. It's not just any other coaster. This was actually an attraction which was done by Dynamic Attractions. And it's a very famous, innovative company which was involved with many, many big rides around the world. Amongst which, for example, Soarin'. Soarin' is a Disney ride, a flight simulator, or Test Track, an Epcot ride, or Radiator Spring Racers, which is the Cars themed ride. So they're very famous, and they were actually building this Mission Ferrari as a true statement to show what they can do. And I wanted to throw a question at you. Do you have any idea what was the budget for Mission Ferrari?
I don't know exactly, so let me guess. Was it about $10 million?
Yeah, I would also say maybe that seems like a decent budget for it, but it was originally supposed to be $18 million.
All right.
And they even went over by 10 million. So the ride was more than $28 million in the end.
Okay, that's crazy.
Which is, of course, a crazy amount of money. And the thing is that this attraction was not only very expensive, it was also really troubled by getting it right, getting it safe, getting it operational. Programming was apparently a problem. There were so many new things that they were trying to do that it took way longer than it was supposed to take. And of course, it cost so much money that in the end, Dynamic Attractions actually went under and they are now bankrupt. And this Mission Ferrari is one of the reasons. And that's actually really sad.
Yeah, that's a pity.
Another thing that I found is that there is another type of this particular attraction is standing in the mountains in Malaysia.
Really? Where exactly is it in Malaysia?
Genting Sky Worlds. And this attraction is built. It was never operational for guests. And the story is that they're probably going to take it down and it will never open. So
okay, it's again a pity.
Such a sad story. But still very impressive that we experienced it.
Yeah, I'm very happy because the ride is really unique and innovative. So it was nice to try it because it goes every direction. It does crazy moves up and down, sideways. So this was a nice experience.
So enough about Ferrari World. We have to talk about something else. We have visited Warner Bros. World. We have to give a bit of context as to why we are here and how we got to this point.
Yes, so as we mentioned in our previous episode, we are still in the Yas Island and we have a couple of days here to discover the best parks. Yesterday we've been to Ferrari World. Today it's time for Warner Bros. Tomorrow maybe we'll go to SeaWorld, so we'll see. So the schedule is quite full. And we are just very much amazed about how everything is well connected and integrated because it's all located in one island. And we are staying in the hotel that also belongs to the project. So we have a bus stop just right in front of our hotel, which allows us to take free shuttle to the parks. What is interesting is that all of them are indoor parks. Only the water park is the outdoor park. But we'll see if we have enough time for that.
To get into the background of the project, because this is also a project with a really interesting story behind it. The project is initiated and built by Miral Experiences. So this is the same company that also built Ferrari World, which opened in 2010. And they're also the company behind Yas Waterworld. They also operate the Formula One track over here. It opened actually, Warner Bros. In 2018. It was spearheaded, the project, by the chairman of Miral Experiences, Mohammed Khalifa Al Mubarak. And he was also the head of the Abu Dhabi Tourism and Culture Authority. He was a massive comic book fan, and he's also a film enthusiast. So he always had this idea that he wanted to do a flagship park with a big Hollywood theme behind it. And that's an interesting choice because it is, of course, a direct competitor to the Hollywood-based theme parks that are already in Dubai. As we know, the theme parks in Dubai opened in 2016. I have the feeling that Yas was kind of in competition and that the Miral Experiences group wanted to go over that and do even better. Apparently, the conversations already started 10 years before the opening of Warner Bros. World with Warner Bros. Studios. And it's really interesting because Warner Brothers is kind of, because of this, is kind of back into the theme park business. Because Warner Bros. Actually has a couple of theme parks with their IPs in it. They used to have Warner Brothers Movie World in Germany running their IPs, but that's no longer there. It's called now Movie Park Germany, and they lost all the Warner Brothers IPs. The last park that opened under Warner Brothers was Parque Warner Madrid, and that one opened back in 2002. It's still there, and there's a park that's very similar to that one also in Australia on the Gold Coast. And I know both parks. I've also been to the Parque Warner Madrid park, and I can definitely say that that's a nice park, but this is on a completely different level. So apparently, and I'm paraphrasing here, the senior VP of Warner Brothers Consumer Products, Peter van Roden, said that the response by Warner Brothers was that they are ready to take on such a big project. The project was mainly focusing on two things, on DC and on Warner Brothers Animations. And when we discuss the park, you will see that there's very specific choice of IPs that they put into the park. In the meantime, we have seen one of Warner Brothers' most famous IPs appear in 5 different locations in the world. Do you know which one I mean?
Do you mean the Whistling World of Harry Potter?
Yeah, and it's not even Warner Brothers' own parks. It's actually in Universal Studios parks. It was a collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
And that's such a highly detailed, very high quality, really well done themed area that it was always for me kind of a question mark as to what would it look like if Warner Brothers does something like this on a larger scale. So not only one land in a theme park. And there is something we have to say about Harry Potter. So more info we will discuss later on. It's time to go to the head, the heart, and the base. So the head is the first impression of an experience, and then the heart is where we discuss the actual theme of the experience, the core. And then the base. The base is more the trail of the experience, so basically what lasts from the experience. So first let's go to the head, the first impression.
When we arrived to Ferrari World, the first thing we could see in front of the bus stop was the mall, and you had to go through the mall to the park. And in case of Warner Bros, it was completely different because we were just arriving to the hall, so to the park in itself. So I would say it had this anticipation moment already because you could see the facade in itself. On the way, we were, of course, passing the other parks. So once we stopped there, we could see this yellow, huge facade of the building with some characters painted on it. And we could also see the entrance, which was quite a grand entrance because they had this contour shape of Warner Bros. Shield.
Just the way that everything is set up, the square in front, where everything is directed and pointed towards the main entrance of the hall, and the massive hotel that really wraps around the square, it truly feels like it is one stylistic approach to the entire project. It's very, very well laid out. It's very clean. It's very organized. And This also brings me to the next point where we actually entered the hall, the kind of the pre-space, so the area where there's the ticket booths, but also the gates. It seemed like a very modern, very minimalistic, very clean space where there was kind of a lack of elaborate decoration or theming. It's one of those steps in the experience where you still don't really get to see what the theme park is all about, right?
I think it's a clear design decision to build this anticipation. So still you don't really know how is it going to be on the inside.
Yeah, because the next step is that when you go through the gates, when they check your ticket, you pass a big Warner Brothers logo, which is definitely set up for like a selfie moment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually when you really enter the theme park. So that's when you go and you walk into Warner Brothers Plaza.
It's a central hub, which also is the center of the park, and from where you can navigate to different zones in the park. And it also serves as an immersive land. It is surrounded by beautifully themed facades in Art Deco, Hollywood style.
Now it also is very clear to me that to keep all the spaces and the design language before actually entering the park very simple and minimal, it really emphasizes this moment when you enter Warner Brothers Plaza and you're just overwhelmed by detail and by the incredible amount of decoration and this beautiful lighting, which we have to talk about later. Another thing actually that this Warner Brothers Plaza is used for, the central hub, is for the show. It's called the Cinema Spectacular. And the best way to describe it is that it's more of a trip down memory lane kind of show, where you get to see all the media, all the films that Warner Brothers has been making throughout their very, very long history. And then you realize when you watch this show, like, wow, there are so many famous films coming from this studio. You can really feel also in the reaction from the people that some of this stuff is so world famous. You know, as soon as you hear the opening sounds, the opening notes from the Harry Potter soundtrack, you immediately hear the whole audience like, oh, Harry Potter. And you, of course, have so many other films, you know, that show there. You have, of course, the Lord of the Rings franchise and The Matrix and everything with the Looney Tunes and many of the big films by Christopher Nolan, the Batman franchise, but also all the DC characters like Superman, like Wonder Woman. It's just incredible to get all of that in one big show, and it's really, really well done because the show is projecting on both the building's facades but also on the sky, which we will also talk about a little bit later. So just to close off the head, how would you describe your first impression?
So as a rising excitement, because from the beginning we've entered the hall, all the time we were anticipating for seeing more and more. And once we were in the Central Hub Plaza, we were just really excited about the whole day.
Yeah, I think it made us excited as a bunch of kids.
Yeah, it's building up the tension.
And then we go to the heart of the experience. We can quickly run through how did we experience the park.
All right, I'll give you a little overview how the park is laid out. The park consists of immersive lands, which are Metropolis, Gotham City, Carlton Junction, Dynamite Gulch, and Bedrock. And all of them are connected by previously mentioned Central Warner Bros. Plaza.
So we started by entering Bedrock first, the land that is entirely based on the Flintstones. The Flintstones was so incredibly famous from Hanna-Barbera back in the 60s and the 70s.
And then we took the water ride, and the water ride, the river adventure, made us really wet.
It's a flume.
Yeah, it's the flume ride. And you leave the ride quite wet, so it was beginning of the day, and we had to get dry in a while. But it was a nice ride as well.
This whole area, so Bedrock, it kind of slowly goes over into the zones where the Looney Tunes are.
Yeah, and I think we've done all the coasters on the way and all the little attractions that were there. Like, for example, the Fast and Furious roller coaster. We've done a couple of times, I think.
Fast and Furious.
Right, Fast and Furious. So there is a Tom and Jerry, which is a Swiss cheese spin coaster. There was also Scooby-Doo, the Museum of Mysteries. There was also Acme Factory, which was a shooter, and we've really enjoyed it with beautifully stylized queue line.
And did you? This is a question from me. Did you know all the IPs and the characters?
So I knew very well the Bedrock area, so the Flintstones, of course. But for Cartoon Junction, I would say I knew well the cartoons, but I haven't watched all of them. For example, Willy Coyote, I haven't really watched as a kid, but I knew what is it about and I've seen it. Did you know all of them?
Yeah, I think I'm really a kid that grew up with the Looney Tunes. I really watched a lot of Looney Tunes, and we also used to have on television Cartoon Network in the Netherlands, which was for the beginning years. It was for free, so every kid basically was always, when we came home, we were watching Cartoon Network, and a lot of the content on Cartoon Network was from the Warner Brothers animations.
We also had it in Poland. But it was similar as you're saying. I think for a while it was free, but later you had to buy some subscription. So I'm not sure if everyone had it at home.
Let me check, because it was Warner Brothers. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
So that's probably the reason why we were so familiar also with all the cartoons.
Kind of Disney Plus back then.
It was so recognizable for me. I have to say that already this feeling to be in a park where the Looney Tunes are a central aspect, like a central character, I already had that excitement when I was in Park Warner Madrid. But you have to imagine in Madrid, it was maybe only a little town, some meet and greets, and, for example, a carousel. And over here, it was just so well done. It was so detailed.
Yeah, the full zone was about it. For me, also Scooby-Doo was well known, so I was excited about this one. I think I've seen maybe more the movie version than the cartoon before, but still.
From the Warner Brothers animations, you go more into the DC IPs, and I think that is maybe even the best order to do things, because then you go more into the very serious, like the dark IPs, right?
Yeah, the grim world, let's say.
The first thing that you see is Gotham City, the famous city from the Batman IP. And can you tell a little bit, Alex, how was that?
Gotham City was completely different zone. As you've mentioned, it was very grim, dark. You had this feeling of mystery. The zone was all about Batman, Harley Quinn, and Joker. And we were very excited because it was looking much more serious and much more mysterious in a way. The main thing that we've seen just after entering the zone was the Riddler's Revenge. And it was a disco coaster, which you know very well, Lee, but for me, I've never done that coaster before. And I think you only agreed to go there first because it was beautifully themed and it was like completely differently looking than just a disco coaster placed in some field.
Disco coaster is a very well-known attraction type. It's in many different parks, but this one is exceptional.
It was surrounded by a warehouse, let's say, and you had the feeling that you're going to touch the walls or the steel structure. It was also going above the water, so we could really enjoy the views of the zone, and I think it was very, very nicely integrated and nicely themed.
A little bit further in the zone, there's of course also a big attraction all around Batman. It is situated in the Wayne Enterprises building, like a headquarters. I have to say that we were both going into this entire Warner Bros. Experience without much prior knowledge. We didn't really look into it. We didn't read up on it. We didn't really see any videos. And when we were standing in line, I was truly convinced the whole time that it was going to be a flight simulator. But what happened then, Alex?
So it turned out it wasn't a simulator, as we've previously thought, but it was a dark ride. It was a Batman night flight where we boarded robotically controlled flying Batwing. and we were helping Batman to fight crime in the Gotham City. So the robotic arm was taking us from one scene to another.
Besides that, of course, in the Gotham area, there's many different little jokes, like hidden things here and there, pointing towards some of the characters that you know from the world of Batman. But also, there's a very smooth transition into Metropolis. So the city of Gotham and the city of Metropolis are two cities from the same DC universe, from the comic universe, but they are different cities. And where Gotham is very dark and grim and a little bit rugged and weathered and damaged, and you can easily see that it's full of graffiti. There's a lot of influence from the Joker. There you also have Metropolis, and Metropolis is a much more refined, a much more beautiful Art Deco, clean, posh city, and the transition is so well done. Do you remember a bit what was there in Metropolis?
Yes, for sure we've done Flying Theater, 4D Flying Theater, and it was a Green Lantern Galactic Odyssey. There was also Justice League, so Warworld's Attacks. And quite memorable, right, was also Superman 360, which was a battle for Metropolis.
And of course, all throughout the park, there are many different options for retail. And I have to say, I was really impressed by the amount of food and beverage also, restaurants, little food places. So there's so much to see. And I think the main thing that I can take away from the very heart of the experience is that there is so much detail in the park that even if you already did all the major rides, you can still spend a lot of time just taking in all the details and how well it was all built and laid out. So I think after Metropolis, we made the full circle through the park, and that leads you back into Warner Brothers Plaza. It's maybe good to talk about the still very early, but the base, so the trail of the experience. So what do we take away from it?
For sure, level of decoration and impressive queues. I think they were just so beautiful, and we've spent in just the queue line so much time to see them. And from the favorite zones, I don't know, do you have some favorite zones?
I have always, since I was young, I was really crazy about Batman, so it was just incredible for me to see Gotham City.
Same.
Especially with this quality. I already had it when I was really young, when I was still a child, and we were visiting Warner Brothers Movie World in Germany. And I remember back then that there was a parade, and in the parade there was the Batmobile with Batman on it. Already back then I was impressed, but just to see Gotham City that is depicted so well, like it's so true to the comics, and it has such a rough edge to it, and the Joker is so, you get like shivers down your spine when you hear him laugh and when you hear the sound of his voice. And I think Gotham City was very impactful. But besides that, I also have to admit that I wasn't expecting for a cartoony zone to be able to look so good. I feel that the cartoony areas or the cartoon-based areas in this park, they don't feel like children areas at all. And that's a very high praise.
Yeah, I will agree with you on that, because for me also the most impactful zone was Gotham City, but also the Bedrock area, because it's a nice contrast. So one was very dark and grim, but the other one was very happy and funny. Yeah, it's a nice balance between colorful areas and the dark ones. So I think everyone can find something for themselves.
When the day was over and when we exited the park, we decided to still go and have a drink at the WB Abu Dhabi, so the hotel opposite. And you can tell a bit, Alex, what was it like? What did we find there?
Once we've entered to the hotel, we've seen a display, a cabinet that was having some props from the movies. We've seen also pages from the Harry Potter script hanging from the ceiling. On one corner of the hallway, there was a merchandise store where we could still buy some souvenirs that we didn't manage just before the closing of the park to get. And at some point, when we left the souvenir store, we saw Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck. So it was very nice. We had still opportunity to take pictures with the mascots.
Yeah, they just appeared in the hotel lobby. It was such a nice moment.
Yeah, it was so cute.
Yeah, we managed to talk to a girl working there, and she said that actually the hotel is also sometimes used for a big Warner Brothers related event. So they have movie premieres there sometimes with famous people coming over, like actors, and staying there. So that's really interesting. It was truly also a celebration of Hollywood and the Warner Brothers films.
After that, we decided to have a drink in a bar, in a restaurant, and we had a nice live music, and we could just discuss how was actually the day in the park.
It was really nice to end the day like that and to reflect on what we saw that day. So let's now talk about our professional view on the experience, because as we always mention, is that we have an architect right here with theme park development experience, and I'm actually more into the development from the design point of view. So I would like to ask you, Alex, when you look at this project through your architect, first of all, maybe let me ask you this. Did you actually experience the park through the eyes of an architect, or were you able to let that go?
I think I was lost in the experience, so I think we were acting like two kids and enjoying it fully. But also we had the moments of admiring how well everything is done, and like you said, the level and attention to detail. But also we had moments when we just said, like, you can't see any installations here, or you can't really see where the ventilation is hidden. So everything is such total design. So I think I was trying to lose it, but sometimes, of course, we were just thinking, like, how did they do it? Like, it's so nicely done.
I think you will never be able to truly let it go 100%. But I do have to agree with you that because it was so well done, it is easier to be immersed.
Yeah. It takes you into that world.
I have to, by the way, explain the term immersion a little bit, because I don't just want to throw it in there without explaining what it is. I'm using an explanation which was once presented to me by Wim, who is also actually a good friend of mine, and he's very good at explaining the term immersion. So what we mean when we say immersion is the intrinsic immersion motivation. There's like three aspects to this. The first aspect is the enhanced involvement into an experience. So, for example, this could mean that if you are playing a game, you are basically very much focused on the game itself, and you're not focused on what is happening around you anymore. Also, a focus on properties of an activity. So, for example, if in the game there is the target of reaching the most points or the most credits or something, it means that it really needs you to focus to reach this goal. And another thing is the attention away from the self. And that's a very good point which you can illustrate with, for example, a movie. When you're watching a movie, you are not thinking about you sitting in a seat watching a screen. You're basically placing yourself in the story, and you're feeling along with the characters or with the actors on screen. So that's what we mean with immersion, those three core pillars. And when I talk about the fact that we were able to reach this immersion in this park, I think that's a really, really high praise, because it's basically a hall which is fully decorated, but we really felt sometimes like we were in this world, in this immersive world that was laid out in front of us. And that was really, really impressive.
I could give you some quick data that I've managed to find about the park. So, as we've already mentioned, it's a year-round park, and it's fully indoors. And the size of it is 150,000 square meters. We already mentioned the extreme attention to detail and how beautifully it's painted and finished. Also the facades, and especially we were amazed about the facades in the Central Plaza, which are reproducing Art Deco facades and the buildings found in the heart of Hollywood. But what was super impressive from the point of view of an architect was definitely the ceiling and the roof in itself, because the structure consists of 7 half domes with circular tops, and there are some openings 8 to 10 meters, and some of them that have height of 8 to 12 meters, so they are huge domes, but they are fully covered, and in a way you completely don't see the installations or the structure of the domes.
Yeah, I think that deserves a little bit of an explanation because it is a true contrast also between what we saw from IMG Worlds of Adventure and the Motiongate indoor area, which was, of course, the DreamWorks area.
Yeah.
What stands out in this project is that there are several different approaches to that. One of the things that you immediately have to mention is as soon as you work with an indoor theme park, there is literally this massive problem hanging over you, which is a ceiling. It's something very difficult to deal with. It really normally takes away this feeling of being outside. And what you see in Warner Bros. Is that they use a couple of approaches to dealing with the ceiling. First of all, you have the black box approach. And we have seen this approach earlier. Also, this is used in, for example, the DreamWorks Hall in Motiongate, where they just don't light the ceiling up as much as possible, so they keep it very dark, and this kind of makes it disappear, but it's not an ideal way of dealing with it. The one zone where they did this in Warner Bros. World was Gotham City. And frankly, in Gotham City, it kind of works, because it's a very dark zone. It's very black. It's supposed to also portray the night. So I think here the black box approach really works well.
In the Looney Tunes area, the ceiling is painted, and it has light boxes in the shapes of clouds, which are lighting the zone in even daylight. However, the best ceiling was in the central Warner Bros. Plaza, and this one deserves more attention. And it is shaped like a dome, so it has no edges and corners. And thanks to that, it is giving the impression like a person is standing under the clear sky. It is also painted so that it looks like a night sky. And during the show that is being held within certain hours of the day, there are also projections done on that ceiling.
Warner Brothers consciously chose to make it more like a connection of large indoor spaces, where they were able to completely hide the actual supporting structure for the hall. And that is way more effective than what we, for example, saw in IMG Worlds of Adventure, where the structure was just very visible.
Yeah, that's true, because I didn't think of it previously, but now when you mention it, in IMG, we could see the whole ceiling and the acoustic panels. But how it's done here in Warner Bros., it's completely hidden. The ceiling is part of the theming in a way. It's not a structural element anymore, but it's part of decoration, which is quite impressive because it's quite hard to achieve that.
They actually made the ceiling almost like a seamless layer over the inside of the hall, where they also used indirect lighting, but also the projection, as Alex mentioned, of clouds, or maybe even sometimes the clouds were static. And this was very effective. What happened was that if you looked at the architecture around you, the ceiling was almost disappearing out of your peripheral view, because the ceiling was like a continuous curve, which was really evenly lit. And this totally gives you the feeling that you are outside. And this was done in both Metropolis and Warner Brothers Plaza. And truly, my hats off, because normally an indoor theme park is really struggling with this feeling of being outside. And this park is the first that I see that is just very effective with it. That truly made this happen.
Now, I'm very curious about your point of view as a professional.
In theme parks, we often talk about immersive worlds. And of course, the term immersive is really overused lately. But what we mean by that is that one immersive world is a world in which you are truly immersed, but also each immersive world has their own design language. And there should be a very clear distinction between each different immersive world. And that's what the Warner Brothers world does very well. It's very obvious that you are in Gotham City and you're not in the cartoon world. There is a very clear transition between the different worlds. The transition or the borders of the worlds don't have to be literal. You don't really need a marquee saying, and now you're going to enter this world. It can also be a distinction that is found in, for example, the design language. Truly, in Warner Brothers world, it's a masterclass in those different immersive worlds existing right next to each other and being so different from each other. All the different zones have their own atmosphere, their own lighting, their own soundtrack, their own design language. And in the center of that, at the very heart of that, you have this very clear Warner Brothers Plaza that is really celebrating the peak of Hollywood. And every area, regardless if it's an area which is only a play area or if it's, some really elaborate, expensive dark ride, it doesn't matter. Everything is done with the same attention to detail. And everything is so authentic. All the rock, the stone, the wood, it truly feels solid and it all looks real. So now I want to go to the point room for improvement, because we have been praising this park for what it is, but I really want to hear from you. What is there that you think could be even better?
For me, maybe there is one thing that could be a little bit improved. It's about the shows. I think maybe there could be more information about what time are the shows and how to find them. I know there was an app and there were show times, but sometimes we were a bit missing some of them, or they were at similar time and it was difficult to see both. So I think maybe this information could be a little bit more clear. But besides that, I don't really have much to improve. What is it for you?
I think in Warner Bros., the one thing that I think could be more present is water. And by that, I especially mean flowing water, so moving water. Because Warner Brothers World does have some places where there is water. There's the Flume, there's some fountains, and there's also this body of water at Riddler's Revenge. Yeah, but I think it could use a bit more water in some areas just to give it this extra boost and extra atmosphere. Because the Flume, for example, is mostly hidden. There's only one turn which is visible from the general park space, and it has a little waterfall. But I think it would be great if there would be more moving water, flowing water, maybe more water fountains. It would really improve the overall atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting point of view. Yeah, but I agree with you.
So one thing where Warner Brothers actually stands out in relation to the other projects that we have seen is that it's actually a very one-dimensional park. What I mean by that is that it is truly a very detailed and well-themed theme park, but on a completely flat concrete slab. And it is the flattest of what we have seen. Even Ferrari World immediately comes to mind, where you had like the lower layers with the karting track, but also Motiongate in general, the theme park had some depth, had some water bodies, had some hills, and IMG even had a bit of height differences here and there. So I have to say that maybe this is something that if Warner Brothers World decides to expand, it would be great to actually see them add some levels. To emphasize that and to get rid of this feeling that you are in a hall on a concrete slab. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I think it's a really nice point that you have. That for sure, even in Motiongate, we've noticed very nice level changes. And that's true what you're saying, that it was quite flat. Everything was on the same level in the hall.
There was something interesting. There's only like one thing that stood out to me that actually played a little bit with levels. And that was in both Metropolis and in Gotham, they had metro entrances. And when I looked into it, I saw that the stairs were real. It was real stairs going down into the ground. So I assumed that they were probably for maintenance purposes and that there is like the technical basement under the hall, and that they actually used those access points as themed metro entrances, which is brilliant the way that they did it, because it looks so incredibly real. And the other thing is the water body at the Riddler's Revenge. That was actually a part where it looked a bit like a quay, like a dock, and the water was a bit lower. Those areas worked really well. I just kind of wished that there was a bit more of that. Okay, another thing that I think is also something that maybe I pay a lot of attention to is that I feel that the storytelling was maybe a little bit one-dimensional too. And what I mean by that is that it was a bit this approach, this typical approach to a story where it was like, hey, come in, recruits, let's see if you have it in you, what we are looking for. And then something goes wrong, and then you basically have to prove yourself, work with the hero, save the world, and thanks everyone, you did a great job. And this story is so incredibly overused in the theme park industry in general.
Like a repeating pattern.
It seems rather predictable right now, and I think it would have been great to see, for example, a new approach to the story that they could have told actually about Batman or about Joker or about Green Lantern or about Superman. But that's a bit of a missed beat, I think. There could definitely be some improvement there. So then we go to the grumpy minutes. This is where we can really blow off some steam, just be negative, and just throw out the stuff that was annoying to us, and then we can quickly move on from that. What do you have to say about it?
We had few times the situation that the customers were just acting crazy. Like they were really troublesome and making lots of hassle for the operations. And sometimes I really felt sorry for the operations because they had to either argue with some people, and this is also what we've mentioned already in the previous parks, that in general this is the type of customer. But I think in that park it was quite extreme because we've encountered some situations like lady arguing at the queue line that the security had to come and calm her down. She was still not calming down. Then she left the queue, came back. She wanted to be in the fast pass. Then she brought her whole family. You know, like this kind of dramas that are a bit taking you out of the experience and shouldn't really be there.
Yeah, we even saw people fighting.
Yeah, right. Or also in the coaster, the Fast and Furious, we had a situation with the father that we were just about to leave and he was continuously interrupting the operations so they couldn't actually do their job.
Yeah,
And
he was
even
staying too close to the train. He was... The operators kept on telling him, "Sir, please move to the side. You have to be out of the way from the coaster train." And it was so annoying. It's like they have no idea how important safety is, I guess, and also how to behave around an attraction.
Yeah, exactly. So in that regard, I would a little bit defend the operations because I think they have quite a hard job to do. And the customers are definitely not an easy profile of the customers. They are quite demanding and quite pretentious in a way. So this would be my only grumpy minute, I guess. Because sometimes we were just surprised, like how far they can go and how much you have to argue.
I think in line with that, I have to also mention something. I do really notice that in the Middle East, I often see that the child is king. The children are often not corrected by their parents. And what we would consider, misbehavior, I could see that in many cases the parents just let it happen, or they even encourage the kid to do something that is really unacceptable. We had this one moment when we were standing in the queue line for a dark ride, and a father was just placing their kid in the theming to make a photo.
Oh yeah, right.
Already until that moment I was like, okay, that's quite unacceptable. But then the kid just started to grab things, smash things, trying to rip things apart. And this was when I couldn't shut my mouth, and I literally turned to the father and I said, "Please don't do that. Please don't let your kids in the decoration." And he looked me in the eye and he said, "Is it yours?" And I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Like, it doesn't matter if it's mine or not. It is definitely not yours.
Yeah, you still have to respect someone's property. I think that's why the kids are acting this way, because adults are also not acting right. So they just don't have the best example.
Yeah, that was something that was really bothering me. And it's true what you say. We have to also acknowledge how difficult it must be for the operators to deal with the type of client that visits the theme parks in the Middle East, because they are very difficult to work with. Although I do think that from a procedures point of view, I think the park could improve the procedures just to make it all much more clear and much more quick.
Mm-hmm.
And then this additional layer of the clients being difficult would also be less time consuming, I think. So let's go to I would say the more upbeat part, which is the highlights. So what were true highlights? What was something that we have to emphasize just because it was so good?
Definitely the highlights for me were the level of theming, maintenance, queue lines that were just amazingly themed. Everything was highly decorated. And I would say my favorite zone was Gotham City Batman themed zone. And what was the highlight for you?
Yeah, so there's so many highlights to talk about, but of course I have to make a decision. I think first of all, I have to say that it was for us truly immersive. And that's a very rare thing to reach when you are a professional in this field. Normally we are very distracted by all the stuff that is happening around us, and we were truly just enjoying what we were seeing, and we were in the moment. And that's rare. That's something that we don't experience much anymore.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it's extra difficult to achieve that as a park if it's indoor park, because then you have much more limitations that you have to deal with. And I think in that case, they just really nailed it.
Yeah, I think normally when you have an outdoor park, you have the blessing of landscaping, the sun, greenery,
the sky,
this kind of stuff, the sky. And this park has none of that. It's fully indoors, so it actually is truly a testament to how well they managed to make a man-made surrounding so incredibly captivating and immersive.
It is especially difficult to make someone stay indoors for so many hours and not to make them feel tired because of lack of natural light and other aspects, continuous air conditioning, which were not that used.
Or noise.
Yeah, especially noise. And for some reason, you don't really feel tired after the day in the park. You are not exhausted by being there, or you don't have this feeling of, I just want to get out of here, it's too much. But it's a pleasant experience the whole day, and you feel like you can stay there for so many hours.
The other thing that I truly enjoyed in this park is the material expression. Of course, what we are always doing in theme parks, even more than in Hollywood, in film sets, we always have to play with that kind of stuff in a theme park. There's always a balance between what is real and what is fake. And I think here in Warner Brothers World, the materials are very impressive. Much of the Gotham City area or the Metropolis area truly feels like a real city, with real stones on the floor, with real steel, with real wood, with real windows, with everything that you can imagine. And even in the cartoony area, it's still, when you look up close, it still has the texture of a real rock or stone or red rock. So they go so far into detail that's just really commendable.
Yeah, it's quite authentic. That's true. The craftsmanship is on another level, definitely.
Yeah, I think I can easily say that this was some of the best artistic rock work that I've ever seen in my life.
That's nice.
Yeah, and that's very impressive. I said the same thing about Motiongate, but honestly, this one is even better. I think Warner Bros. Surpassed Motiongate on every level. Let's talk about some of the highlights in terms of attractions, so the actual ride experiences. And what comes to mind with you, Alex? Like, what are the rides that they were just amazing, maybe even above and beyond your expectations?
Maybe my favorite ride was the Batman Night Flight. I also enjoyed the disco coaster, the Riddler's Revenge, because of also the theming with this choice of neon lights, green lights used on the seats, and because of the hole that it was surrounded with. Also in the zone, what was amazing was the tent used for the funhouse for the Joker, and the queue line was just beautiful. You felt like in the tent in the circus of the Joker, so it was a very nice attraction. Most of them are in the Gotham City, actually. And for you?
Yeah, first of all, I want to start with the fact that this park, even though it's an indoor park and it's only 150,000 square meters big, this park already rocks 6 dark rides or attractions with a dark ride element to them, which is a really, really great count of dark rides. Normally, the bigger parks, so the Disney parks, Efteling or Europa Park, etc., 6 is actually really proper. They're very unique, by the way, to also Warner Bros. World. You will not find a copy of any of these anywhere else in the world. They actually really went an extra mile and made all these experiences unique. I think another thing that I have to mention is the really big surprise of the Green Lantern Galactic Odyssey flying theater. It's not my first flying theater ever. I've actually ridden quite a lot of flying theaters, but I have to say, hands down, this is the best flying theater that I've ever tried. It was such a great simulator approach to the flying theater. It truly felt like it got the most out of what the flying theater can do as a ride system, and that was a big surprise. And another thing that I want to mention, which is often very overlooked, but I really think that it deserves praise, is we also talk about sense of space. And in an indoor theme park, of course, you have to be very careful with your use of space because everything costs money. Normally, when you would build a hall and you would build, of course, all the experiences under the roof, every square meter is, of course, a lot of money. But what I see in Warner Bros., which I didn't really experience in IMG Worlds of Adventure, and even not on this level in the DreamWorks Hall in Motiongate, is that they use space just to introduce you to a certain feeling and atmosphere. And that's very unique. I've never seen it applied like this. Like one really good example is the Warworld's attack from Justice League, the dark ride. The entrance of the dark ride, when you enter the front door, let's say, the next space is just a truly enormous space, which is lined left and right by massive statues from DC characters. And that's just really impressive because you're not even yet in the queue line. And we saw the same thing with the Flying Theater, Galactic Odyssey. There's also, when you enter this space, you have this really high entrance space within the top of the dome with the beautiful lighting. They just use it to give this feeling of space. Yeah, that's amazing. I haven't seen that utilized like this well.
Yeah, and if I may add something to that, is the fact that the space feels just right. And it's maybe easy to say, but it's not overscaled in any way, or you don't feel like it's too little or too cramped. It's just like the pathways to roam around, the height of facades, everything just feels natural and just right for the amount of visitors on that day.
They continuously played with that, with small, with high, with wide, with narrow.
Mm-hmm.
It's in that regard, actually, for someone who is in the theme park development, and also we also struggled with using ceilings. When you look at this, you think, wow, I don't think you can top this. This is just really on the money.
Mm-hmm. Another important aspect that is worth mentioning is the lighting design and the choice of light. So architectural lights and show lights are just used in such a way that they only emphasize the amazing theming.
And there is such a high level of customization of lighting in this park. And a lot of the lighting is integrated lighting, which means that it's not just a theatrical fixture hanging from the ceiling and lighting the surroundings, but it's actually lighting that was specifically integrated into the theming, into the architecture, sometimes also into the ground, lighting up the ceiling, which looks like the sky, or giving a really nice warm glow on the facades, emphasizing all the shapes, like the Art Deco shapes. And I think continuously in this park, I was just, with every zone that we entered, I was again surprised by the different atmosphere purely because of the different decisions in lighting design. So let's go to the rating. We have an idea of what kind of grade we would give Warner Bros. World. So we have the theme park review form, the form that we always use to rate a certain experience, and especially theme parks. And this time around, we actually both filled in the theme park review form. So I have both of them here. And I want to hear from you, Alex. Could you guess what number you gave to Warner Bros. World?
For sure it was around 9. And if you can remind me, what exactly was it?
So you rated Warner Bros. World with an N score of 9.73.
Okay. Very high.
That's very, very high. To give you an idea of what that means, so we have the numbers 1 until 10, and 9 is described as amazing, you cannot miss this. 10 is outstanding, some of the best I've ever seen, can hardly imagine it can be any better than this. So you are really, really close to outstanding.
I agree with that.
So let's check my grade. I gave it a 9.2. So that's still well over amazing. And actually this really reflects how we experience Warner Bros. World. So undoubtedly the thing that you gave the highest grade is the point show integration, story and content. And this is the point where we describe the dark rides, the immersivity and the theming level, the show integration, show programming and the narratives and IPs. And you gave it a 10.
Yeah, because of the IPs, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just very strong. And also the merch.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit that purely from the point of view of IP, you can barely go any better than this because they utilize IP so well.
Yeah, I mean, they use the top IPs that exist in the world for the park, so I guess.
Exactly, and I actually rated the point the highest, which is attractions and experiences. I rated that a 9.8, so that's almost a 10. I think I really stand by that. I think this park has an amazing palette of attractions. It is fun for everyone. The only thing that they are slightly missing would be a thrill coaster. But from the other side, I think that that's something you will be able to find in Ferrari World. So that's something you wouldn't have to go to Warner Bros. World for.
It's more of a dark rides than the rides in itself.
Yeah, it's more like a show slash IP experience with a big emphasis on families. Yeah, so that brings us to the next point. Would we consider this trip off, consider, or trip on?
I guess the rating says by itself, so you shouldn't miss this one, and it definitely will be trip on. And I believe you will say the same.
Yeah, I would be surprised if we would say anything different than trip on. I think this is a very clear trip on. So normally, of course, we mention what is next on our planning, but I think there's another interesting thing about what's next, because Warner Bros. World has already presented that they're going to build a Harry Potter themed land. We did talk to some people who are involved in this project. They cannot say a lot about it, but they did mention some things, and I have to say the anticipation is very high to think about what they could do with the Harry Potter IP for the first time ever, developed and built by Warner Bros. Themselves instead of Universal Studios. I think that's really, really interesting. And I want to also know from you, Alex, what do you expect from that?
Well, I expect something big because seeing the quality of the park, I think it can only get better. And I'm super curious, where do they want to attach the new zone and where they will do the actual entrance to it. We have some little guesses, so it would be nice to see where they actually did it.
Yeah, there's even a chance maybe that they want to do it with a second gate.
Okay.
Separate entrance.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll find out soon.
So the next park on the planning is SeaWorld Abu Dhabi, and I really hope that this upward trajectory is going to continue and that it's going to be even better than Warner Bros. Let's hope. And this leaves us to say, as always, our tip:
go on and plan your next trip.